I'm Carissa and welcome to my channel. So today I'll be sharing with you on how do we have constructive feedback sessions, dialogues, and even conversations with one another. So firstly, if you're the one giving the feedback to someone else, there are a few factors that you might want to consider before, actually giving them the feedback. For instance, you must consider what are within your control and what are not within your control. For example, you can create the kind of content and draft it out, before sharing with them your feedback to them. So what kind of message would you like them to know and to hear from you? And what is your intention for bringing across the certain feedback that you want to give to a particular person? If your intention is to just let out your emotions and to criticize someone, to make yourself feel better, or to make another person feel small beside you, then you might want to reconsider your intention for providing certain feedback. However, if your intention is to help the other person know his or her areas for improvement, then that might be a suitable intention to have. And next, you can also consider creating an environment where you and the person feel safe to share about certain feedback. So for example, you can choose a setting where there are no other peer colleagues if it's a work setting, or there are no other people walking by that might let the other person feel even more threatened, or feel like he or she is being attacked by you, or feel embarrassed and your relationship with the person might be strained. Of course, sometimes there are certain areas in your environment that you cannot control. There are also other factors to consider, for example, the way and manner you want to provide your feedback to the person, and do take into account how the person will receive certain feedback. For example, if he or she seems to be able to receive feedback from a softer approach, then you might want to use a softer approach to talk to them. However, if you observe and are aware that softer approaches might not work for the person, then you might want to consider and explore other different alternative methods. You might also want to think about certain areas of the conversation that you aren't able to control. For instance, the message given to them is from you, however, the message received by them is from themselves. So how they process the message, how they receive the message are perhaps not totally within your control, but what is within your control is the manner and the way that you provide the feedback to them. So do acknowledge that there are certain areas not within your control, and there are other areas that are within your control. And next, I'd like to remind you to be prepared, to handle the consequences that might arise from your feedback to them. So for example, they might actually be emotional, or they might get defensive, or they might even get upset and angry with you. And these are certain consequences that you have to take into consideration as well before you give someone your feedback. Another consequence that might arise from the feedback session could be that they really improve and make certain changes to, for example, their work, their behaviors, and maybe their actions, and the way they speak. And you must be willing and be ready to see them make all these different changes once you give them the feedback, and not totally constrain yourself to your preconceived notion of how they are already as a person, and be biased against them because of what you have observed previously. So be willing and receptive in terms of seeing them change and acknowledging them for their efforts, and also recognizing that they are indeed putting in the effort. Now, if you are the receiver of certain feedback from people, then I strongly encourage you to be impartial as you are listening to the feedback given by others. For example, perhaps you don't agree or disagree right at the beginning of the session, but perhaps you can jot all the feedback down and process it later on when you take another look at it after you have calmed down. I understand that people get defensive and upset or angry at times when we hear the negative side to certain things that we do. For example, we may see all this feedback as criticism and we totally disagree and we want to stand up for ourselves and shoot the other person down. But is it really constructive for two people to, fight one another through certain words or behaviors? I think you know the answer to that. So you might want to be willing and open in receiving feedback from people, and also setting your intention as perhaps one could be that you really see these patterns in your life and you were not aware of it previously before the person gave you feedback. So sometimes you receive multiple feedback from different people and we are more aware of what we are doing, what we are saying that affect people around us. So think positively, it might actually do you good in the long run in terms of strengthening your relationships with people around you, be it at work or your personal relationships and relationships with yourself as well. Next, you can also set your intention when you receive feedback from people. For example, is your intention to shoot the other person down, or is your intention really to just focus on the areas of improvement that you might not see and now you are clearer about them and you want to work on them and improve yourself as a person or as a worker or as a student, in different kind of situations and scenarios for yourself in your life. So moving on to my next point, who is the source of feedback and what is causing you to not want to listen to their feedback? For example, if the person is of a lower rank than you, or if he or she is younger than you, are all these factors your consideration as well when you listen to feedback from people? So does it mean that you have your own biasness and perspectives of different ages or even different authorities and towards different groups of people? Now that would be something that you have to look at within yourself as well, on how come you have all these various biasness that affect you to want to listen or not want to listen to certain groups of people. I like to share that sometimes feedback do come in different ways and different forms, and even from sources that we least expect. And sometimes these are the real, genuine and true feedback that people are willing to share with us, and it is whether or not we are willing to hear them and truly listen to them. I like to encourage both the giver of the feedback as well as the receiver of the feedback to have a two-way conversational dialogue instead of a one-way conversational session. It would be more meaningful and productive to engage in a conversation between both parties, so you can actually ask and clarify certain doubts and assumptions you have of each other and focus on the root of the issue and not be too focused on criticizing each other, but to really hear and listen from each other's perspective. I think that would really matter in terms of having a more engaging and productive feedback session. And last but not least, remember to acknowledge and thank each other after the feedback session. It is not easy to be the one giving the feedback, especially when it can get uncomfortable at times. And it is also not easy to be on the receiving end. So do thank each other and hopefully improve together and as individuals yourselves as well. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that you have gained some knowledge and clarity from my sharing as well. So see you next time. Goodbye.